Good morning, dear student. Dear student, today we are going to start our chapter 4th, which is factor of production. In this chapter, we will study about factor of production, meaning of factor of production, different classification like land, capital, labor, entrepreneur, their characteristics, and then we will study about land, destruction of ecosystem, labor, and in the last we will discuss about capital and entrepreneur. Okay, dear student, for today we are going to start with factor of production. Okay, before starting this topic, dear student, we have to understand about production mechanism, that what is production mechanism, what is production all about. Dear student, by production mechanism we mean the mechanism or the system which determines the production of various goods and services in the economy. It is the system in which most of us are employed. Okay, we have to understand that what is this production mechanism, how different goods and services produced in the economy. We have to understand what is input and what is output in a factory. So this is all about the production mechanism, that how different goods and services produced in the economy. Okay, dear student, to understand this particular concept, we will start with the definition given by Professor Adam Smith. You all know about Adam Smith. He is the father of economics. He is considered as the father of economics. According to Adam Smith, production means production of material goods only. Material goods are those goods which can be seen or touched, which have their definite shape and size. Okay, dear student. So according to Professor Adam Smith, that production simply means the material good. Okay, all the material good which you can feel, which you can touch, which have certain shape, certain size, it is simply known as a production. Okay, like table, fan, pen, cloth, etc. All the example of material goods. Okay, but according to the modern economist, the production of material good is not just about the production. Production means by giving certain utility or value to the goods so that the human want can be satisfied. Okay, making of a table out of wood by the carpenter. Okay, now changing of wheat into flour in a flour mill, transportation of coal from mines to factories are example of creation of utility. So by these we can create utility. Now suppose initially if you talk about table, okay, if you talk about table, then the manufacturing of table, initially it is a wood from a tree. Then a carpenter did hard work and converted that wood into a table. Now we can create utility from the wood, and now the utility which he created in the form of table is simply known as material good. Okay, that's why production means material good with utility, so that we can satisfy our want. This is the point of view of modern economics. Dear student, in short, production is a process in which some material are transformed into one form to another. Whatever is used in the production process is called input and factor of production. So keep in mind that whatever goods you use in the production process as a raw material, it's simply known as input or factor of production. Okay, and whatever is obtained from the process, it is simply known as output. Okay, dear student. So if I said that quantity of X is a function of labor and capital, then this equation simply represented whatever unit of quantity X, suppose whatever unit of table X is produced, is a function of labor, the carpenter, and the amount of money you invested on it. Okay, dear students, so these functions represent the production function. It simply represents that there are certain inputs in a production process, and by converting the input we get the output. Like in our example, we have wood as our input, then carpenter converted the wood into table, so table is the output. Okay, dear student, now this can explain with the help of a flow chart. Initially production, then means resources. Production is possible with the help of resources, then resources process of production, then we process it, then value addition, then certain utility or value is added, then last one is output. Now we can understand this with the help of example. Suppose initially we produce table. Okay, table is produced with the help of wood. Okay, wood is processed by carpenter, and by processing the wood into table, certain utility is added. Okay, now that output is generated, the table is finally generated from the wood. So this is the process. Okay, dear student, now utility can be created in many ways. There are so many ways by creating utility. First, form utility. When utility in goods is created by changing their form or shape. Like in our case, we have table. Okay, we have wood, we convert it into table. Now suppose a tailor convert cloth into some garments, and suppose a flour mill owner convert wheat or rice into flour. Okay, wheat into flour. It is simply known as forming utility by converting the shape and size by converting a product. Next is place utility. Place utility simply represents the transfer of goods from one place to another place. Suppose all the construction work in our house was done with the help of sand. Okay, now where did we get the sand? We get the sand from the river banks. So suppose a contractor, demand sand from the Yamuna, then the Yamuna sand will be transferred from Yamuna river bank to the construction place. So this is simply represent as place utility. Simply, if you talk about coal mines, then coal from the coal mines, okay, then they transport it towards the factory, and they utilize that particular amount of coal. It is simply represent the place utility. Next is time utility. Okay, creation or addition of utility is also possible through change in time. This happen when goods are stored when they are available in plenty, or supply when they are in the short. Example, peanuts. Okay, example, peas are available in the in plenty in the winter season, but in the summer season there is shortage, or there is no pea available. So you can use at that time, you can demand pea from the cold storage. So this is known as time utility. Next is service utility. Utility can also be created by rendering services, like services of doctor, teacher, engineer, transporters, bankers, etc. All these are services utility. Okay, so dear student, in brief, creating utility is a necessary condition of production activity. So always keep in mind that simply production of material good is not production. Okay, production means producing a material good with certain production utility. It's simply known as production activity. Okay, dear student, now move to our next point, which is factor of production. Now we talk about factor of production. Now the first is, what is the meaning of factor of production? Dear student, production of goods and services requires the use of certain resources, which are termed as factor of production. Okay, we know that we need different types of factor of production to produce a goods. Okay, for example, in order to produce wheat, farmer needed land, implements, we need block cart, okay, then labor, then seeds, then fertilizer, etc. Here in this example, land, agriculture tools, and implements, labor, seed, fertilizer, etc. all are factor of production. So these factors are also called inputs. So according to Benham, anything which helps in process of production is a factor of production. So this is the important definition of factor of production. So always keep in mind that anything which helps you in the process of production, it's simply known as factor of production. Suppose you are producing wheat. So for producing wheat, we need farmer, we need agriculture land, we need fertilizer, okay, we need pesticide, we need tractors. So all these are the inputs which we need for production of output, which is known as wheat in our case. Okay, dear student. Now next is, factor of production may be distinguished from the services. Okay, they rendered in production. In production, we do not use factor of production as such, but simply their services. Okay, whenever labor, capital, and land are engaged by a producer, he obtained the services of these factor and their services help in production. Okay, now factor of production, if I talk about land, labor, capital, doesn't mean you are using that particular commodity in your product. It simply means you are using their services. Okay, so keep in your mind. Now if the definition of production is considered, there are two views, dear student. One is narrow view, another one is a wider view. If you talk about the narrow definition, it simply represents production is the manufacturing of physical goods only, such as machines, cloth, pen, book, table, fan, computer, chair, etc. All these are production of the physical good. This is our narrow definition of production. Now if you talk about the wider definition of production, then production means creating or addition of economic utility in goods. It includes both material and non-material goods. So dear student, these are the different definition of production. So you have to go through all these definition. If I talk about narrow definition, it simply represents the physical goods which we produce. If I talk about the wider view or wider definition, it simply means production of material goods including the certain economic utility in that particular goods. Okay dear student, now move to our next point, which is classification of factor of production. Dear student, all factor of production can broadly be classified into four categories. Okay, the first one is land, the second one is labor, the third one is capital, and the last one is enterprise. So we can see that we have four factor of production: land, labor, capital, and enterprises. Okay dear student, we will go through all these factors one after one, okay, in detail. But in this particular flow chart we will discuss these factors in short, but we will go in detail in our upcoming videos or in the upcoming part of our chapter. Now dear student, the factor of production, first we have land. Okay, all free gifts of nature like soil, water, forest, mountain, mineral, all are the part of land. Okay, so a farmer have land. If a farmer have land, okay, and okay, if a tenure have land, it simply means the water, the soil, the forest, the mountain, mineral, whatever is in our earth, okay, in the form of these things, it simply represents the part of land. If you talk about labor, it means essential of labor. Why labor is important? Labor, this labor particularly represent labor or employee. It may be a labor, it may be a employee. If he is educated, then he is an employee. If he is not educated, then he is a labor. Okay, because labor gets wages and employee get salaries. Okay, now if you talk about labor, then essence of labor is human work, physical and mental work, then work done for income or reward. Okay, so all these activities performed by any individual, it simply categorized into the part of labor. Okay dear student, next part is capital. If you talk about capital, then all man-made means of production like machines, tools, building, roads, raw material, all these are part of capital. So production of a commodity, any commodity, production of any commodity, you must need capital. Okay, capital means machinery. You must need machinery, tools, you must need building, roads, raw material for production of any commodity. That's why capital is important. Now the last one is entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is very important part of the production of a commodity, because for production of a commodity we must need a person who is the risk bearer, who can take the risk, okay, who can take the initiative of production goods and commodities. Second, organize of other factor like land, labor, and capital. All these factors is organized by entrepreneur only. Okay, because if entrepreneur is not present, then land, labor, capital itself did not contribute in the process of production. So we must need a person, okay, who can manage all these things. It is simply known as entrepreneur. Next one is control of business. So these three things will be done by the enterprises or entrepreneur itself. That's why factor of production is a combination of these four different factors: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur. Okay dear student, now we will explain these point in detail in our upcoming video also. Now in this part we are going to discuss about these concept in a short form or in a brief form. Now if you talk about capital, dear student, all man-made durable goods which are used for further production of wealth is included in capital. Okay, all man durable goods. So capital is a produce. So you can see that capital is a produced means of production. It includes machine, tool, buildings, okay, ठीक है, roads etc. So all these type of goods, we can say that all these are the capital which is used in the process of production. Okay dear student, in modern uses, capital not only refer to physical capital but also human capital also, because human is also a type of capital. The process of increasing knowledge and skill of the people of a country, it play a vital role in a modern productive system. Capital formation increase the productivity capacity of an economy. So always keep in mind, if an economy, if capital is increasing, it means the production capacity of the economy is increasing. Okay students, so always keep in mind, whenever you heard about this particular term, that increase in capital, it simply means plant or machinery increasing. It simply means the tool which we are using is increasing. It simply means the manpower which we are using, they are also increasing by increasing their skills, their creativity. So it is simply represents the capital. Next is enterprise and organization. Okay, enterprise or organization, if you talk about enterprise and organization, it simply means land, labor and capital, or nature, human and material means of production respectively. No production is possible without bringing these three factors of production together by using them in the right proportion. So there must be somebody to hire them from their owners, or pay rent, wages and interest as reward, and to decide the quantities of each need of production. This is known as organization or enterprise. So dear student, we must need an enterprise or an entrepreneur to organize all the factor of production which we have. Okay, and dear student, you all are familiar with the factor of production. Now whatever you pay for the factor of production, it's simply known as factor payment. We have factor of production like land, labor, capital, entrepreneur. For all these factor of production, we have to pay certain amount of return, okay, which is known as factor payment. Okay dear student, now example, for land you will give rent, okay, for labor you will give wages and salary, okay, for capital you will give interest, and for entrepreneur you will give profit. So all these are factor of payments which you give to the factor of production. Okay dear student, now we will talk about our next part, which is characteristics of factor of production. Okay, there is no need to do this particular part, this is not in your syllabus. Next point is modern classification of factor of production. Dear student, it is one of the important point that you have to understand this particular phenomena, that the classification, okay, in the modern form. Okay dear student, we can see the classification of factor of production with the help of this particular chart. We have traditional classification. Okay, we already did this. Like in traditional classification, we have land, labor, capital and entrepreneur or organization. This is classical form of classification of factor of production. Now in the modern classification of factor of production, we divide factor of production to two parts. One is factor input, second is non-factor input. If you talk about factor input, it is primary input like land, labor, capital and entrepreneur. Dear student, these are factor inputs. Okay, second one is non-factor input. These are secondary inputs, all non-durable goods. Be careful, all non-durable goods and services used in production. Okay, it's simply known as non-factor input. So in modern classification, we have 2.1 is factor input, another is non-factor input. Factor input means land, labor, capital, enterprise, and non-factor inputs mean all non-durable goods and services. Okay, so this is the modern classification of factor of production. Okay, you can see this by this modern classification, all factor of production into factor inputs or primary inputs or non-factor input or secondary input. In factor inputs, they include primary inputs such as land, labor, capital and entrepreneur, whereas in non-factor inputs, secondary input like raw material, semi-finished goods and other inventory. So all these are non-factor inputs. So always keep in mind, when you talk about modern classification of factor of production, you have two things. One is factor input, another one is non-factor input. Factor input means land, labor, capital, entrepreneur, and non-factor input means raw material, semi-finished goods, inventories, etc. All these are non-factor input. So this is our classification on the basis of modern point of view. Okay student, now you can go through the difference between factor input and non-factor input. Okay, factor input simply include land, labor, capital, enterprise. Non-factor input consists of all perishable goods and services used in the process of production. All those goods which is perishable in nature, which is for short duration of time, it is simply known as non-factor inputs. Second point, in factor inputs, they do not lose their identity on being used in the process of production. If you use in these goods in factor of production, then they will not lose their identity. But if you use non-factor input, these input lose their identity when used in factor of production. Okay dear student, last point is factor input is known as primary input and non-factor input is known as secondary input. So that's it for today student. This is the difference between factor and non-factor input student. In our next video we will study about our land. We will study about the new point which is land. Stay safe, stay healthy student.